In this lesson, we're going to be talking about circles on the coordinate plane, basically from two different directions. The first one, take a look at our objectives. We're defining and using the equation of a circle. So up to this point, like in geometry, the only equation of anything that we've looked at really has been the equation of a line. You might think of that as like y equals mx plus b. In algebra, we had maybe an equation of a parabola, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, for example. So now we're going to define what that looks like for a circle. And you might be going like, well, what the heck does that have to do with trigonometry and right triangles and stuff? Well, that's where the second objective comes in, where we're going to complete this thing that's called the unit circle. So I'm going to suggest that while you're watching this video here, the first thing that you need to do is call up my website. I mean, you're probably there anywhere because you're watching these videos, right? So it's on the same exact web page. Again, if you need to get there directly, I'm going to geometry, going to unit 3C, the trig, and it's right there, 27.1 circles chord. Circles on the coordinate plane. So I scroll down a little bit, and specifically I'm talking about the unit circle handout right here. Just click that thing. If you have access to a printer, it would be super helpful if you printed that thing out. If you don't, you're just going to have to do your best to, freehand sketch the thing. And you're going to see just how very useful this thing can be. Okay. As far as this homework goes, look, you just got a couple of problems there on page 399, Springboard book, and some challenge problems to go along with it. So our first objective, being able to define and use the equation of a circle. So back at the very beginning of the year, we did formally define a circle. So we're going to take a look at that definition again. And we're going to look at the definition of a circle in a slightly different way too. So the picture that's here, back in the days when people used to watch television broadcasts, you'd have, not cable. So back in the days before cable even, some TV shows would come on and you'd have to make sure, you'd have to plan your schedule. If you wanted to watch this TV show, this is the time that it would come on. And after a certain time, like midnight or something, then your television broadcast would just end. And in some really, really olden days, this is what would be broadcast. You can see that it says RCA. That's a television company that's right there. Anyway, I picked this picture because you can see it looks like a circle that's on a coordinate plane. Looks like there's some angles there. Looks very similar to this thing that we're going to talk about called the unit circle. Here's our warm-up exercise. When a solid is cut by a plane, the resulting plane figure, so a two-dimensional shape, is called a section. A section that is parallel to the base is called a cross-section. And as a matter of fact, in, say, a science class, you probably have had to draw the cross-section, let's say, of a cell or, an organ or a plant or something like that, right? So it's just a two-dimensional slice of a three-dimensional object. So take a look at the very first picture here. I have a cube, and I'm going to cut across that cube with a plane, and that plane is parallel to the base. So technically, this is called a cross-section here on this gray plane. What shape do you think it is? And then let's look at the middle one. Here I have a cylinder, and this time our plane is going to cut perpendicular to the base, which is not a cross-section, but it's still a section. And then finally, this last one here, we have a cone, and this cone goes right through the vertex, and it's perpendicular to the base as well. Also not a cross-section. So let's take a look at each one of these and decide what they each look like. All right, I went too far. Here we go. So on this first one, when we take the cone, or not the cone, the square, and by square, of course, I mean cube, and I cut across, I only want to think about, and it's hard to see, right, because it's in 3 dimensions, the part that's left over on the plane, and the part that's left over on the plane here is going to be a square. Sure, it is in perspective, so it looks like it's a parallelogram or something like that, but it is definitely a square. Okay, so if I look at the cylinder and I cut across it, I take a section of it. This time, the shape is going to be a rectangle. Now, this is not the only section that I can take of our cylinder here. You could cut across it, say, parallel to the base. So I could cut across it just, and when I do that, it would make a circle. That would be a cross section. Okay, let's look at this last one on this cone. When I cut across it, I do my section so that it goes to the vertex of the cone, it's perpendicular. This time it's going to trace out a triangle. Okay, and the whole entire reason why I showed you these things called sections is because of this one. Whoa, where are you going? It's because of this last one right here. Whenever I take a section of a cone, it's called a conic section. Conic sections, things in mathematics, probably in Algebra 2, you might have an opportunity to talk about, to study these things in detail, both as a section of a cone and then in terms of the algebra. And we're going to look at it from both perspectives here. So the next warm-up question, describe each of the following sections of a double cone. So it's sort of like what we had back here on this previous one, but you put a cone tip to tip. It's called a double napped cone, none of which can touch the vertex. So we're going to draw in some planes or try to visualize some planes and see what the resulting shape is. So the first one is going to be a plane that's going to cut parallel to the quote-unquote base. Cut across right here. What shape, what two-dimensional shape is that going to look like? What if we, on number 2, tilt that plane just a little bit? So instead of it going directly parallel, maybe just tilt it a little bit. What shape do you think that's going to be? Just try to visualize it. Right? And then how about if our plane is parallel to one of these lateral sides? So lateral side is like this thing. So what if I cut it like right here? What shape do you think that's going to be? And the last one is, what if I cut it so that it's perpendicular to both of these bases? So it's going to hit both of them. All right. For some of us, that's kind of hard to visualize. They do make models, like three-dimensional models that you can take apart. Have one in my classroom. Don't have access to that right now. But here's the next best thing. So I'm going to come back to that web page that we looked at the very beginning here. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit more. And then here is a GeoGebra sketch that shows us exactly that. Now, I think the easiest way to look at this and play around with it is actually to open it in the app. So I did the little ... menu button. I'm going to open it in the app. And it's going to start animating here. So here's my plane. It's cutting through my cone, and you can see it's going to trace out different kinds of sections. There was a parabola. Here is, boom, a circle. Now it's going to start coming back. That's called an ellipse, back to a parabola, and then it's going to keep going, and now we have what's called a hyperbola. All right, so I can stop this animation, and I can move it around as I please. So here's that first one. If I cut my double nap cone parallel to one of these bases, the shape that it makes is a circle. And that's what our lesson is about today. All right, if I tilt it a little bit more, it's no longer circular. You guys sometimes call it an oval. In mathematics, we call that an ellipse. As a matter of fact, the planets going around the sun, they don't go around in a circle. It's pretty close to being a circle, but it's actually an ellipse. Right? And then if I just keep going, bam! This is the shape that, of course, you guys study in algebra called a parabola. And then if I just keep going right here, this one looks like it's a parabola, but it's got two pieces. It's got two branches. It's got a bottom and it's got a top, and that type of shape is called a hyperbola. Again, those are kinds of conic sections. So let's come back here to the slideshow. Oh yeah, you're going to restart on me. Fantastic. So we were able to successfully answer each one of these. And the one that we really care about here today is this very first one, this number 1. When our plane is parallel to the base, it's going to make a circle, which is what this lesson is all about. So here are each of the conic sections, the 4 basic ones. We have a circle with the plane cutting parallel to the base. We have an ellipse where it's tilted slightly. We have a parabola where our section is made parallel to one of these lateral edges, and then finally hyperbola whenever it cuts across both of them perpendicular to the base.